What's up, you guys? I am here to talk Emergence Episode 3. You guys wanted answers, and damn, they delivered and they gave them to us. And they actually gave us a lot more information than I was anticipating. But they didn't exactly tell us who Piper was, or like what Piper was. And we still have a lot of questions that need to be answered, but we're getting a lot of answers that I wasn't expecting to get answers about at this point of the series. I've had to sit on this information for a week. It was a week ago today that I sat in the panel at New York Comic Con and I watched this episode, and it was just amazing. It was awesome watching the episode with a whole bunch of fans of the series. Everyone was excited to be there, and the reception that that episode got was great. Now what I did was I filmed some of the panel, but most of the panel focused on discussion revolving around the episode. So I didn't want to put any videos of the panel up because it would spoil the episode for people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recap the entire episode from beginning to end, and then do a little bit post-episode discussion. And then at the end of my video, I'm going to post clips that I took from New York Comic Con of the cast during the panel. I just took a few little clips. So we're going to take a look at the episode now. I'm going to do it from my webcam because it's a lot easier to go through the episode that way, so that you can see screenshots and screen grabs, and we can go through play-by-play of what is going on. It's very easy to miss things when you're watching for the first time, and I've noticed when I go through and recap, there's a lot of things that I missed. So let's just jump into it. So the episode starts off pretty chill and relaxed. Joe is at the house and Alex is there too, and he scares her and startles her because he sneaks up behind her. And Joe is starting to think that maybe it's not a good idea for him to stay there too much. Now, we know that Alex seems to be kind of making excuses to stay there, because I get the feeling that he wants to be there. He wants to be with his family. And that's a really nice idea, but obviously Joe is a little bit concerned because things can get confusing. Not just for them, but also for Mia, their adorable daughter. He's not confused, so he wants to stay as long as possible. It's kind of cute, actually. It's kind of a cute, sweet moment. Alex still wants to know what is going on with Piper and why things move by themselves. This is where a little ship is starting to set sail. Let me know if you're on board with this ship or not. I am, but I might ship her a little bit with Benny. Please don't kill me for that. I think that would be interesting. Of course, Mia is thrilled that her family is back together, so this might not necessarily be a good thing if they do not plan on getting back together. So then Alex has an aha moment and says he'll be out by the end of the day, and Joe thinks that's a great idea. Meanwhile, Piper is upstairs and something is going on. Now this reminds me a little bit of Inception. That's not good. She goes to grab the doorknob and it basically turns into dust. Now since the doorknob has disintegrated, she can't get outside the door, so she's locked in her room. This turns out to be a nightmare. Piper tells Joe the door was broken and she was unable to get out. And unfortunately, Piper is also running a fever. I guess Piper had planned to go to work with Joe. Joe tells Piper she can't go if she's sick. Ed is getting cleaned up and all spiffy to meet with his hot oncologist. Looks like Joe might need Alex to stick around after all. Since Ed is going to the doctor, she needs someone to stay home with Piper since she's going to be homesick. Yeah, something tells me he's not too unhappy about this. When Joe leaves with Mia to take her to school, we have a surprise visitor and he comes bearing gifts, delicious gifts. He might be a little bit sneaky and I don't know if I trust him yet, but I kind of want to trust him and I kind of like him. And he brought treats, so yeah, that's a win. Donuts. He brought donuts. See, Mia likes the donuts. I don't blame her. Who wouldn't like the donuts? I am Mia right here with a donut and running away. I think ultimately Benny wants to talk to Piper, but Joe is not having it. There's no way she's going to let him talk to her. She's being very protective, as she should be. Regardless of donuts, Joe is still not having it. She feels that Piper is traumatized enough and that Benny would just make things worse. Meanwhile, Joe gets a text from Chris saying the suspect that took the hammer to the face, the creepy man, he's awake at the hospital. And finally she caves and takes the donut. I wonder if the producers were really trying to make us hungry with these donuts, because I watched this episode at New York Comic Con and I wanted donuts, and then I watched it on TV and I wanted donuts, and I'm watching it now and I want frickin' donuts. Abby questions Joe when she learns that Alex is staying at the house. And of course, Abby says exactly what Joe said. It's going to be confusing. We have a couple people eavesdropping here too, by the way. He might not have actually been eavesdropping. I think he was eyeing the donut, which I don't blame him. And everyone's off their diet wagons with these donuts. So this guy that they arrested has a room that looks like it's from a very upscale hotel. Look at this. There's just like a nice couch, like a sleep couch, a cushy chair, a corner room with beautiful views and windows. Obviously, our guy here doesn't really want to talk. She has the best facial expressions. So she basically tells our creepy man that Benny's next story is going to be all about him. The story they want to print is probably not going to go over well with the people he works for. So creepy hammer-faced man agrees, reluctantly, to talk a little bit. This gentleman's name is Ken Lerner, and as we saw in the last episode, he went into the house to retrieve a piece of technology, which was the device that Piper had cut out of her ear and tried to flush down the sink. Ken says that he was sent by a gentleman named Richard Kindred. Richard Kindred is head of Auger Technologies, which happens to be a Fortune 500 company. When Joe asks why was he stealing things from her house, Ken says that he wasn't stealing, he was just taking back what was his. Joe asks Ken if Piper was considered part of his stuff. Ken tells Piper that he was told he didn't have to bother with her, that that situation was going to take care of itself. Now, as we know, Piper is ill, and after he makes that statement, it cuts away to Piper still not looking very well. So at this point, it appears they have the technology to control her health, at least. And there's still a lot of questions after what we learn at the end of the episode. However, I do wonder if her cutting that piece of technology out of her affected her. And since we know that they were cleaning up the mess, she might be considered part of the mess, so they probably want to dispose of her. Piper's a little bit inquisitive, maybe a little bit too inquisitive about the current relationship status between Alex and Joe. Piper is also well aware that Alex likes staying at the house. Now, right away, something a little bit bizarre happens. Piper begins taking down letters based on the codes that are coming in the computer. Just so we can kind of get into specifics here, because we might actually need these codes in the future, and maybe they stand for something, or they represent something, or somehow tie into this somehow. But this is the actual code. I have no idea what it means. Neither does Piper. And Alex doesn't seem to know either. Meanwhile, Joe goes to visit Benny, and she is not happy at all. There are a couple of things that Benny has hidden from us that he didn't tell us. Joe tells Benny that she arrested Creeper Man and that he talked, and that she discovered that he worked for Richard Kindred. Apparently, this is somebody Benny knows. Benny claims that he investigated Kindred for a year, and that article that he wrote funded 6 months of that. Now, this was his plan to get access, but nobody would let him in and nobody would go on the record. So that led him to be where he is right now, investigating. And of course, Benny is aware that Piper can do things that normal people can't do. Benny tells Joe that this company Kindred began using humans as some type of test subjects. Now, apparently these test subjects are all for medical research. Benny believes 100% that the plane belonged to Kindred. He claims he didn't tell Joe because he didn't have any proof of it and he didn't want to put her in jeopardy. But Joe brings up an interesting point. They actually do have evidence, or some type of very, very interesting evidence, which is that thing that looks like a key card. So Joe sets out to try and talk to Kindred. No surprise that Kindred doesn't want to talk to her, and he has his henchmen kind of push her away from getting anywhere near him. So his minion tells Joe she needs to make an appointment. So she kind of yells within his earshot. She pretty much yells very loudly that she found something of his that maybe he might want back. This definitely gets his attention. And we have Terry O'Quinn here. Yes. So Joe asks Kindred if this belongs to him. Kindred says it's very possible, as they have a lot of products in development. Oh, how kind! Mr. Kindred has offered to keep that device and have his team take a look at it. But there's something missing in there. And Mr. Kindred follows her out of the building to find out where it is. He wants to know what she did with the missing piece. She's so sassy here, it's great. She's like, oh wow, I guess it belongs to you after all. So Kindred becomes threatening pretty quick by asking Joe if she knows what he does to people who steal his property. And then we have a mystery woman that shows up, and then they just walk away. That's it. They just leave. Joe tells them she really likes their office. Now, there's a moment here where she actually makes eye contact with our mystery woman. Her name is Emily, and she seems to want to tell Joe something. Kindred picks up on this and orders her in the building. So obviously she knows something, and she clearly wants to tell Joe something, but she can't. Meanwhile, Alex and Joe go to get some medicine for her, and then we have like another creepy Inception type moment. Let's take a look at that. So this this actually really scares Piper quite a bit. So first we see the letters fall off of the prescription sign, and then the building is literally crumbling. Like there's a hole in the ceiling. Yeah, that is really scary. Alex hears Piper scream, and she's passed out on the ground. So I guess this is another one of these cutaway hallucinations. We don't really quite know what that means, and we still don't know what that means by the end of the episode, but I'd like to know what that means. So if you guys think you know what that means, please leave a comment below, because I'd like to hear your feedback on that, because that is still unresolved. At the hospital, Alex tells Joe that Abby believes that Piper had a seizure in response to having a high fever. Piper describes her dream as if everything was disappearing. Abby isn't too worried because hallucinations can sometimes be associated with seizures. So then Joe gets a text message from an unknown number. Abby recognizes this as 2 milligrams of copper twice a day. Meanwhile, Chris is guarding Ken, the gentleman that took the hammer to the face, and we start to see some codes again up on his screen over here. It looks to me like he's pretty sure he knows what those codes mean. While this is happening, Joe asks Abby if this prescription hypothetically could potentially help Piper in any way. At this point, Abby wants to know what Joe isn't telling her. Joe notifies Abby that she thinks there's a chance that Piper could be a test subject. And while all this is happening, our hammer-faced man Ken's IV drip seems to be changing somehow. See it filling up. And by the looks of it, he's well aware of this. Meanwhile, Abby agrees to try this prescription on Piper that came from the mystery text because she doesn't seem to think it would hurt her, so why not give it a shot? We cut to Ken here. He's crying out for help, claiming that they are killing him, which indeed they are. Chris pulls out the IV needle, but unfortunately it's too late. He codes and they are unable to revive him. So I'm wondering if maybe they have people work on the inside of the hospital, that they have people doing inside jobs and tampering with the equipment. If their equipment has been compromised and they have access to tamper with it through these codes or whatever technology they're running. I mean, I'm not 100% positive about this, but I think it's a very good possibility. And we cut to Piper's room and she seems to be doing a whole lot better. So the mystery text prescription worked. The only question is, who sent the mystery text? Obviously, someone cares about Piper and wants her to survive all of this. When Joe asks Ed how everything went with the oncologist, he says that everything went well and he has a clean bill of health. Now, I don't know if you guys picked up on this or not, but Piper seems to look at him with concern after he said this. Now, remember earlier in the first episode, Piper said something to him when he was talking about the medicine that he was taking. When he said that the medicine was helping him get better, Piper said, "No, it's not." Yeah, that look is a look of, I know you're not telling the truth. So this might be some part of her ability. She might be able to determine if someone is ill or healthy. Abby wants to run a few more tests, but if everything turns out okay, Piper can go home. Abby has the same questions that everyone else does. Who are these people? What are they trying to accomplish? Why are they murdering people? And how are they getting into the hospital system? And if they want to murder people, why did somebody reach out and send that text that had the prescription that would save Piper? Joe tells Abby it's probably not the same people, or it might be someone working within their organization that wants to help her. Joe obviously wants to get to the bottom of who this mystery person is, and she suspects that it was Emily. They send Piper into the MRI to get another test, which unfortunately doesn't go very well. Piper has another one of her hallucinations. While she's in the MRI, everything starts to fall apart again. In the midst of all this happening, Benny was actually able to find Emily. Piper's condition is getting progressively worse. Joe obviously wants to track down Emily so that she can get a possible cure and more treatment for Piper to get her better. She calls Alex and asks him to come to the hospital so he can stay by Piper's side while she goes and tries to pursue Emily. Benny and Joe track down Emily and she denies having sent the text. She tells them that she has no idea what they're talking about. She still denies having texted them and offers Joe to go through her whole phone to see if there are any records of her text. And when Joe looks at the phone, there is a message and it says they're watching. I guess they make some type of arrangement to meet up at a location where there's a facility. Finally, Emily arrives. Emily tells them the way to help Piper is inside this building and that this is an off-the-books facility for Augur. So it sounds to me like it's pretty top secret and probably a place where they could get in a lot of trouble for trespassing on. She tells them that the cure is in one of the lockers inside. They're gonna have to break in the building to get it. She deactivates the security system and machinery so that it's down, Emily tells Joe that if they do not retrieve and administer the cure to Piper, she will have organ failure in 2 hours and she will stop breathing in 3 hours. When Joe asks Emily how she knows all this, Emily says she's seen it, which means it's very possible that they've had other test subjects go wrong or go rogue. Benny offers to go in by himself so that Joe doesn't risk her job. When Benny asks Joe if she still doesn't trust him, Joe tells Benny she doesn't trust her. So they enter into the facility, and this particular part of the show becomes very X-Files. Breaking into some type of secret facility, that's very Mulder and Scully. So Joe pushes the button to open the door, and it doesn't open. Instead, the door behind them closes. I just want to show you guys real quick the motion clip here. This is something right out of X-Files. They got decontaminated, and the door is open. What happens after this? And they each have a flashlight when they go inside. And actually, I really like these two working together and investigating things together. And I really want to see more of that because they have an interesting relationship and their banter is a lot of fun. And I got really, really excited when I watched this because it just brought me back to X-Files. This is great. This is just really good television. So Joe goes and finds the locker that Kelly sent her to, and she pulls out a metal briefcase. She goes to find Benny, and he's locked on the other side of the door. After Benny unsuccessfully tries to break the lock, Joe successfully breaks the lock with the fire extinguisher. Unfortunately, that seemed to set off some alarms. It set off robots. And not just regular robots, robot dogs. We have robot dogs. And that brings me back to X-Files again, because in season 11, there was an episode, I think it was called Followers, but Mulder and Scully ended up being chased by a whole bunch of drones, and then eventually by an entire army of these robot dogs. So they go through the doors and they close on them right before the robot dog catches up with them. Well, we have another surprise for you. These robot dogs can actually break down the door. And here they come. And then it falls over, just like the robot dog meme that falls over. And we turn around and look who's there. She said 5 minutes, people. You took too long. So inside of this metal briefcase is this little yellow device that she pulls out, and she puts it into what looks like almost a USB flash drive. Apparently this is an exabyte disk. Meanwhile, she's not really answering any questions. She seems to be in a rush. So according to her, this disk is Piper. So the disc is her. She doesn't mince words at this point. This disc needs to be put in a dock in her wrist. Joe is completely skeptical about all this. Doesn't seem like she's quite ready to accept that Piper might be a robot or a cyborg. She was looking for more conventional type medicine. So then she leaves and tells them never to contact her again. She sounds like she's pretty much done with them. Joe is quite angry, and he seems to want to believe all this, but Joe thinks that this woman conned them so that she could steal some of the technology from the facility. Joe goes back to the hospital where she finds Alex by Piper's bedside. Alex says that despite her prognosis from Abby, he believes that Piper's going to be just fine. Joe sends Alex out of the room, and she takes the disc, and like a magnet, it attaches itself to Piper's wrist. And then it lights up, and you see all this light up. It looks to be loading, and we see the same type of figures that we've been seeing all along in the show. I think Joe's finally ready to accept what Piper is, not who Piper is. And of course it worked. Piper wakes up, appears to be absolutely fine, and asks if they can go home. Back at the house, Alex decides it's probably best if he goes home. But before he goes, he gives Joe the codes that Piper translated from the radio device. And then we have Joe look at Piper at the end, and Joe seems a little bit uneasy about everything, but Piper seems happy. And that's the end of the episode. That was a whole lot to take in, guys. A whole lot. And I want to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and let me know what you think. If you have any questions that were not answered, specifically these codes, we don't know what they mean, as well as all of these visions that Piper have been getting, not just in this episode, but in past episodes. Is Piper a full-blown robot, not human at all? Do you think she is a cyborg? Cyborg-ish? We don't know. But according to some of the tweets that I'm seeing from the cast, this is just the beginning. There's a lot more information that we're going to find. And I really like that they gave us a lot finally. And everything really came together in this episode. And I felt like it was a very suspenseful hour of television. Thank you guys for joining me in my recap. I look forward to next week's episode. If you're on Twitter, you can follow me at LarisseF. If you like this video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can get notified when I upload a new recap video. What I'm going to do is leave you guys with clips from New York Comic Con. Alright guys, I will see you guys in my next video. Thanks again.
And Sabrina Guevara.
Aloha.
Everybody. Okay, I don't think I'm the only one saying this. I have lots of questions after this episode. It was a good episode.
That's what we want. That's what we told y'all, and y'all didn't want to believe us, and now you know. We answered the question everybody wanted to know. Who's Piper? And you got more questions. That's how it goes.
Wait, I think first of all, Ashley and Alexa, you had something you wanted to break to the crowd, right?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, we wanted to say
That hairstyle was
so uncalled for and totally unexpected.
It's important we get that out there.
We literally practiced that so many times.
And messed it up still.
But we just agreed that it was unplanned for, right?
Wait, did we unplanned or unexpected? Did you say unplanned?
Guys, let's perfect it for the next dinner.
There we go. There's some heat between those two.
Okay.
Right? So, and I like that, you know, the show's teasing it a little bit, but, you know, should we be shipping, Jolex?
Yes.
Yes! Yes!
I think when Donald and I did not know each other before we got together to
Well, we
shoot.
kind of knew each other.
Kind of knew each other. He and my boyfriend have been golf buddies for years, so we had a common friend.
Yes. He doesn't cuddle burrito.
No, that's true. He doesn't golf with me, so it's fine. But so we hadn't met until we started shooting, and I think that we and our writers were all kind of like, oh, this is nice though. This is good chemistry. Maybe we should lean into this. So I ship the two of them, but I also know good television comes from conflict. So hang in there.
Ashley, what does Maya think? Maya?
Yeah. I think Mia wants them to be together. Like, at the beginning of the episode, she said, yeah, this is nice, because she wants their family to be together. I think that makes sense.
Well, also talk about Jo's journey just in these 3 episodes. There's already been so many things going on, but she's the kind of character that really rolls with all this. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot of things throw her. Do you see her as that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think she's kind of like her ability to sort of compartmentalize and deal with what the thing that's just right in front of her is really remarkable, and you continue to see that moving forward, obviously, after learning this bizarre piece of information. Her ability to be like, to kind of roll with the punches and be like, okay, well, what do we do? Like, now that we know this, what do we do is better than mine. I would be flipping out if I were Joe.
Well, I know, I like seeing...
You'd be on the curb, girl. You'd be gone.
Well, I feel like I would be like knocking on the door and be like, please.
And I'd be like, no. Get out of here, robot.
If this were an 80s sitcom, this would be like Small Wonder. Everybody's like Stranger Things. I'm like, no, Small Wonder.
There we go. But I like the fact that Joe's also the boss.
Yeah.
Which we don't see that
So
a lot
do
on
I.
TV.
Sorry, go on.
You don't see it a lot on TV, so how refreshing is that your character is the boss?
Yeah, no, I love the fact that she's this sort of like very capable policewoman, but she's also like very warm. She seems like a real person to me. I always say that I feel like a lot of times policewomen in shows are just like these like hardened women whose like fathers never hugged them, and her dad hugged her all the time, right, Clarence? Yeah. But yeah, I think she's a very capable, warm kind of badass. I just love her. I think she's so cool.
And I do love the relationship with her father, and Clancy, you play that so well.
Thank you.
And we got a little bit in this episode about maybe a little with the doctor or something, but is there more coming for him as far as his personal life or a piece of the story?
Well, I think every woman is slightly attracted to a gray fox. I'm not gonna spill anything, but I don't know anything to spill. And I will say this though, what you just saw, just count how many people know in the story know what